So this video is going to serve as an appetizer and a amuse-bouche, if you will, to what will most likely be my next video, single shadow recommendations for people who are new to indie makeup. I wanted to do a separate video on blue-brown eyeshadows because I think these are a really great starting point for people who are wanting to explore the indie makeup world. I say that because if you have experienced a decent amount of eyeshadows, more likely than not, you've come across some form of a blue-brown pigment, whether it's ColourPop Glass Bull, MAC Blue-Brown Pigment, Urban Decay Lounge, or one of the various palettes that has one of these eyeshadows in it. You are probably familiar with the concept of this blue-brown pigment. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Riley, and I occasionally review new products, mostly indie, but more often than not, I like to revisit my existing collection and take a more analytical approach to reviewing it. If you like that type of content, please consider subscribing to my channel, and please check out my Instagram. That is my main platform. So for this initial portion, I'm going to go through all these shades and swatch them and talk to you a little bit about them. I have them separated by brand, but I'm gonna try to, at the end, I'm gonna try to fit all 10 on my arm together, and if not, I'll probably just group them in groups that make sense. Maybe I'll split them in half. All but one of these are available as singles. The only one that's not is this shade. This is VR Sextasy from the Pat McGrath Moonlit Seduction palette. I just included this because it is quite similar to a few of these indie shades. Please note I am using the term blue-brown loosely. Some of these don't really have any brown per se. They're more like burgundy, terracotta, maroon base, but I think they do fit into that family and they're worth taking a look at all together. So let's start. This is Terra Borealis from Terra Moons. This is a duochrome, and this is one of the most extraordinary shadows I think that they have in their lineup. It has a terracotta base with sparkles that shift from teal to blue to purple. The finish is quite sparkly, and it has some texture to it, as you can see. It definitely has like a medium large particle size. I wouldn't consider it to be necessarily chunky or flaky. I think it does smooth out really nicely. You don't have to do too much work to get it to apply that nice even layer. The cool tone sparkles juxtaposed against that warm terracotta base just create the most juicy, wet looking effect on the eyes. It is so shiny and reflective in person. It makes a great one and done look as well. It can be sheared out to an extent. So here's what it looks like when you shear it out. It does maintain that base, but you see it does kind of melt a little bit more into my skin, and I have fair skin with olive undertones. This one is just really special, and I think it's $8 or $9, and you can use a coupon code on it. I have one. It is SEEKINGSHIFTS15. Plenty of other creators have one as well. Interdimensional is another duochrome from Terra Moons. It is similar to Terra Borealis. It has a deeper brown base, and while the particle size is a lot smaller, it still does have some texture and sparkle to it. It's not quite as sparkly or reflective as Terra Borealis, but it still does have a nice reflective sheen to it. You can pretty much treat this like you would a more traditional shimmer eyeshadow, like it will work with the same types of brushes, or you can use your finger. So as you can see here, the teal does appear a bit cooler tone than in Terra Borealis because of the difference in that base, but I do think they're the same type of shifting pigment, and then it shifts to that like purple, and then from a harsh angle you see that base coming through. See, it's much deeper and more prominent. Here's what it looks like sheared out. So as you can see, that base, it does not really dissipate once you diffuse it. So this is like the deeper, smaller particle size and more opaque sibling to Terra Borealis. Cosmic Dancer is an extreme multichrome from Terra Moons. I just hit pan on this when I was swatching it a little bit earlier. This has a very small particle size and a neutral brown base. The base is the least prominent out of all the Terra Moon shades I'm going to show you, and as you can see, it definitely reads the most vibrant. So this has an extremely reflective and vibrant finish despite being a very subdued base. This has the most readily available shifts. You see that very almost warm teal to blue, I would even say a bit of indigo, purple, and then you see that brown base from a harsh angle. So there is that grounded nature to it due to the base. It's a really great one to layer because it can be sheared out. So here's what it looks like when it's sheared out. That base really diffuses away and you just see that teal to blue to purple shifting pigment. From a harsh angle, you do see that brown peeking through, but mostly from straight on. In most angles in an everyday setting, you'll see those blue, teal, purple shifting pigment. Next we have Grisaille from Clionadh. If you are a friend of the channel, you've heard me talk about this probably 8 million times by now. This is one of their glitter multichromes. So between the time when I filmed this footage and now when I'm editing this video, I watched a video from a creator, GlamGirl09, and by the way, you should subscribe to her. I really enjoyed her video about single shadows, but she mentioned in that video that she picked up both Grisaille and Abrasion from Clionadh, which is the shade I'm going to show you next, and on her skin tone, which is a medium skin tone, much deeper than mine with an olive undertone, Grisaille read a lot lighter and more pink, and she mentioned that Abrasion actually was what she was expecting Grisaille to look like because she had seen swatches from creators who had a lighter skin tone. So I just wanted to mention that I think that's really useful information, helpful for me to when I'm discussing these eyeshadows in the future. Like I said, I'm going to link her video below. I definitely recommend checking it out. Has a medium large particle size and it's quite textured, as you can see. The base is like a subdued brick red, contrasting against those cooler tone sparkles, like I said, creates that really juicy wet look effect. It has so many different forms of sparkles throughout it. It has those main like teal, blue, purple shifting sparkles, and then there are scattered more like true blue and silver sparkles. So just look how incredible that is. From a harsh angle, you see the base peeking through is more of a red, but from straight on you really see that teal to blue to purple. This is probably my favorite out of all the shades I'm going to show you today. It's just such a standout to me. I use it literally all the time. The amount of dimension in this eyeshadow is insane, and I'll show you what it looks like sheared out too. Here's what it looks like sheared out. So you see that dimension coming through, all those different colored sparkle flecks. This is just one of my absolute top recommendations from Clionadh. Here's Abrasion from Clionadh. This is like a sibling to Grisaille. It is quite similar in many aspects. I would say the base is like a plummy maroon. It reads a lot cooler tone than Grisaille. And the contrast between the base and the sparkles is not as intense in my opinion. So it doesn't quite have that same wet look effect, but it's still a very dimensional and shiny, reflective eyeshadow. Definitely another one I would recommend from Clionadh. I feel like this is so versatile. You could pair it with more neutral tones and kind of diffuse it out, or with more colorful tones. So this is what it looks like when it is sheared out. So you see it's definitely reading a lot deeper and that base is showing through a bit more, but definitely a similar vibe to Grisaille. This is another eyeshadow. If you've been around for a while, you have heard me talk about this multiple times. This is Mystic Moonpie from Devinah. Mid-tone taupey brown base and a very desaturated teal blue purple sparkle. To me, it almost reads like a silver, but if I were to isolate the actual sparkle particles, I think they would be like that same teal blue purple. Just the base makes it read differently, color theory, yada yada. This is quite sparkly, and while it does have texture and dimension to it, it feels soft to the touch, and it's one of the easier shades to work with from Devinah. It applies easily in an even layer, and it shears out nicely. Here's what it looks like sheared out. This is just a really good one to give you that wet looking eye. The most neutral I think out of all these, and I believe it's one of the most similar to VR Sextasy from Pat McGrath. Here's Messier from Devinah. It's like a sibling to Mystic Moonpie, but not quite. There are some differences. It has a mid-tone neutral brown base, maybe a bit warmer tone and a lot more present. The other difference is it has a more saturated teal to blue to purple shift. It feels more textured and it doesn't really apply as evenly as Mystic Moonpie. From my experience, it works best if you tap it on a concentrated area, or if you want it to be applied all over, it's best to use a more tacky base. Here's what it looks like sheared out. So it does work to be sheared out, but if you look closely, it is pretty uneven in terms of the distribution of that base pigment. So you probably will have to take a little bit of extra time to really diffuse that out evenly. This is called S'mores from Dandylions Co. And this has a slightly warm mid-tone brown base with a teal flip. This is probably the closest to that like traditional blue-brown pigment you may have seen before. It's very finely milled and it feels like a satin, but it does have a nice sheen to it. I enjoy this formula because it is pretty thin and it's really easy to work with. It can also behave like basically like a matte in that it can be easily blended along the edges and diffused out. Here's what it looks like when you diffuse it out. See that finish? It feels very like sophisticated to me. I haven't tried too many of Dandylions Co shimmers, but I really like this satiny, sheeny finish. If you have any recommendations that are like this same finish, let me know because I'd love to try them out. Retro from Glamshop has a deep cool tone brown base with teal, blue, and silver sparkles. This is one of their velvet shadows, which I do enjoy the formula of. They can also be used like mattes, but they have a lot of finely milled sparkle that does not dissipate when you blend it out. Honestly, I'm thinking of decluttering the shade because I don't really use it. The base is really deep, so it's not personally one I would use as like a base for a look. And I also wouldn't really use it to deepen up a look because those lighter sparkles kind of like defeat the purpose. I'm not opposed to using a shimmer shade to create depth in a look, but like I said, those sparkles make it a little bit difficult to add that depth. So I'm keeping it in purgatory for now, but I just wanted to share it for the purpose of this video. Here's what it looks like when I diffused it. Finally, I have VR Sextasy from the Pat McGrath Moonlit Seduction palette. The formula closely resembles Mystic Moonpie from Devinah, but it's a bit drier. This is not one of the big shades, but it still does have a bit of dryness to it. It's just not quite as flaky. As you can see from the shades that I previously swatched, this is not a unique type of eyeshadow, but I still think it's really beautiful. I'm going to link Cine Reviews and Millie Back to the Brows videos below. They both did comparisons between VR Sextasy and a bunch of like single shadows from indie and non-indie browns, I think, including a bunch that I don't have in my own collection. And like I said, I will compare this with all my shades here after I'm done showing you this. Here's what it looks like diffused. It does retain that base, so it reads a bit deeper than some of the other shades I've shown you, and it has a very PC dimensional flaky formula. I really enjoy this shade, and while it is quite similar to a lot of the shades I just showed you, I can appreciate the idiosyncrasies of the Pat McGrath formula, so I'm glad I have this palette. Shades swatched together in direct sunlight from the wrist down. They're in the same order that I featured them in this video. I tried my best with the labels, but it's hard to fit 10 labels in one screen, so they're not going to be perfect. I did the best I could. Here they are in my regular lighting setup, which is 2 ring lights. Most textured and sparkly ones are Pat McGrath VR Sextasy, Devinah, Messier, and Mystic Moonpie, Clionadh, Abrasion, and Grisaille, and Terra Borealis. And here is some close-up footage so you can see more dynamic swatches. You can slow down the playback speed if this is too fast. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Like I said, my next video is going to be my recommendations for shadows to check out if you're new to indie makeup. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Bye.